All right, here we go for this week's special Luck on Sunday talking points. We'll start off, as I said, with the Melbourne Cup. And the Europeans could be back in some significant way, Lee, with the announcement that Aidan O'Brien wants Tower of London to go to the Melbourne Cup, the runner-up in the Bahrain Trophy, the 3-year-old. We know all about Vauban, who'll be a heavy favourite. But what about, as revealed exclusively in Lee Mottershead's excellent interview with William Haggis in today's trade paper?
Desert Hero, the King and Queen's horse. William is planning to enter the horse in the Melbourne Cup. It's not a speculative entry. He was talking about how he really thinks the horse is the right sort for the race. He was talking about how he'll need to go in the second quarantine batch, but he wasn't talking in a way we're just putting this horse in for a look. They're genuinely interested in the race. And it does seem to be part of a changed narrative. Racing Victoria brought in far stricter, tighter veterinary protocols. William was making the point, my view on those hasn't changed. I still don't like them. But I think the carrot of the Melbourne Cup, the enormous value of the race and prestige of the race is tempting people. You've mentioned that Aidan O'Brien wants to bring Tower of London, and there are many more entries already for the Caulfield Cup and the Cox Plate, and there will be for the Melbourne Cup.
And it's interesting, Stuart, I was at Ballydoyle this week talking to Aidan O'Brien, and he talked quite freely about the veterinary checks and about how they differ from the way you'd campaign horses here.
Yeah.
But in common with Willie Mullins and William Haggis, they're sort of like, well, that's what we just have to deal with these days. Just get on with it. Get on with it.
So the locals will have to find another way of stopping the Europeans from coming down there and taking their best race.
But how much lustre do you think it adds to the race having the international
I think it's great. I think it's great from our point of view. From their point of view, obviously, it's not great that their breeding programme isn't as extensively mile and a half based as our best horses over here are. So I think our better European mile and a half, 2 mile horses are better than theirs in general. So which is why they've been coming over here, buying them and doing the same thing as we're doing, going down there and trying to win their race.
You'd have thought, wouldn't you, as night follows day, that at some point there will be more middle distance horses that are, bred in Australia. But
well, they don't have a big middle distance programme.
No.
Apart from the big races, a lot of their races are shorter distance races.
So
they
these
don't
are outliers.
They're outliers. So for the breeding industry out there to change for a few races for a few horses, it's going to be a difficult thing to do. Their breeding industry is based on speed.
Okay. The bell's taken a break this week, but I'm going to say ding and move on. Social media ban. What's this, Lee?
Well, move on is what the BHA said to a gentleman called Michael Wiebel.
I like what you did there.
Thank you. Who has been...
Is that how you pronounce his name?
I don't know, Wiebel or Webble? I don't know.
I don't know. Wiebel.
But it doesn't sound like he's the sort of person who's nice enough for us to care how his name is pronounced.
He's a social media... He's a Twitter
He's a social
troll.
media user. Right. Over the course of at least a year, he sent intimidating, aggressive tweets to racing practitioners. The BHA became aware of this, and he is the second person who has indefinitely been banned from British racecourses as a result of his social media behaviour. This news came in the same week in which Oisin Murphy made public the fact that a study had showed that over a year he had received over 8,000 tweets.
He was quite.
Like
he seemed to be quite enjoying the fact. He's sort of taking so weird, perverse delight that he'd had 8,700 hate tweets. But it's no laughing matter if you're getting abused every day, is it?
Well, Twitter's kind of like that people can say whatever they want. That's what it's there for. People can say whatever.
You abuse me on there all the time.
But I think crossing the line is, when they're making death threats, they're making things like that is just beyond the pale, and it should be clamped down on. I applaud the BHA for doing it.
Yeah, actually just getting on and saying zero tolerance on
exactly.
just people being downright mean.
Yeah.
All right, are we done with that?
Yeah, I just think it's just in general terms, Nick, it shouldn't be hard for anyone on social media to disagree with someone and do it in a polite, measured, respectful way. There's no call for anyone just to hurl abuse at someone because they don't like them, they don't like a ride that they've produced, they don't like the way they've trained a horse, or they don't like something they've written or said on the media.
Yeah. Agreed. Let's move on. Ace Impact was a a pretty ready winner of the Group 2 Prix Guillaume d'Ornano at Deauville this week in the hands of Christian de Muro for trainer Jean-Claude Rouget. Right favourite for the Arc, Stuart, or not?
Probably just about. I think there's a lot of water to go under the bridge before we get there. Very slowly run race the other day, and it was hard for him to look impressive, but he managed to get the job done.
Came home well, though,
he
didn't
did come home well, yeah. No, it was a quick last couple of furlongs, and he's obviously an impressive horse. But like I said, I still think there's a fair few. But there'll be a fair few opponents for him that'll be worthy of consideration.
Who might be the most potent one, do you think?
Well, I don't know. It's hard to say at this stage. Hookham, will he go there? You know, why would you rule him out? He's done nothing wrong this year.
And they're keeping him fresh for the race.
Yeah,
so.
for sure, yeah.
Lee?
It's funny. I watched the race live, and initially I was a little bit underwhelmed by his performance. I thought, well, he's not really beaten these two particularly impressively, and I just thought, ooh, I'm not so sure. But then, and it's quite encouraging that we can do this, I changed my mind over the next hour or so as I watched it again and again, listened and read what people had said. Jean-Claude Rouget seemed to be genuinely thrilled with the performance. He spoke about having brought the horse about 85% into the race. It's quite clearly a trial, a prep race, albeit an incredibly valuable one. And you looked at the reaction of Christian de Muro going past the post, punching the air like Barcelona did when he won the Derby on Pourmois. And you sort of think, well, that guy was really pleased with what he has just experienced there. And we shouldn't underplay the mastery of Jean-Claude Rouget. He's a brilliant trainer. He has sent horses to the Arc who have won or gone very close. He knows what an Arc winner looks like. And at this stage, if you look at the Arc picture, it's a race that could go in two different directions. Yeah. You know, it could end up looking quite a weak Arc, but equally, if horse like Paddington gets thrown into the frame, all of a sudden it will become a much deeper sort of race.
Exactly. That's Ace Impact, who is currently favourite for the Arc, and he completed the latest phase of his preparation with victory in the Prix Guillaume d'Ornano at Deauville earlier in the week. It is sales season in Deauville. Arcana yearling sales, kicking off the yearling sales season, and 2.4 million euros paid for a daughter of Dubawi, a half-sister to Wooded and to Bucanero Fuerte. Yeah. Oliver St. Lawrence said, well, she's nearly worth that as a broodmare. Yeah, but she is worth a lot of money as she stands.
He's not far wrong. He's not far wrong. Yeah, no, it's great. The top end of the market at the yearling sales is absolutely flying. It's absolutely buoyant. Very difficult to find those people to buy those horses, and they tend to end up in the same stables all the time. But no, it's great that the top ends are strong.
I mean, I was going to say there is a little more diversity insofar as it's not just Godolphin or Coolmore, but you are only adding in other potentates. So it's either Bahrain or it's whichever division of the Qatari ruling family or whichever.
Well, it's the Mornay that you were talking about earlier is loads of English representation. No English-based owners.
I don't know. How do you count Ammo Racing as an English-based owner?
Well, possibly,
yeah.
I suppose, yeah.
But I get your drift. Yeah. There's not much kind of homegrown investment. Yeah. And are you seeing that coming down through the ranks?
Yeah, I think it's getting tough for the English-based owners with the economy, how it's been the last couple of years, and the strength in the sales market has meant that it's been quite difficult for your English-based owner to compete. You know, I think coming down the line, I think if we can get enough people interested, and I think it's going to get there, we're going to go down that route of multiple ownerships. Will be a big thing going forwards.
And this isn't just syndicates as we traditionally know them, or fractional ownership or micro shares. You're talking about 10 or 15 quite wealthy people all clubbing together.
Yeah, I think
and then having horses.
Yeah.
A bit like you see in Australia.
Yeah, I think you'll see that more and more.
And that might be furthered if the premierisation plan really comes to fruition. The boss at Hexham this week, Lee, has expressed, I think, quite grave reservations about that proposal of premierisation to hive off those good Saturday meetings and make everybody else stand aside.
It remains a subject, Nick, that is pretty
It's an
divisive.
extremely annoying word, I might add.
Yeah, it is. It is, and it's annoying a lot of racecourses too. Those towards maybe the bottom of the racecourse Premier League table, if you like. We learned more about it this week, Nick. There was a BHA media call in which senior executives, including Chief Executive Julie Harrington, updated the media and therefore racing fans on some key issues going forward. We learned that there are plans to be around 160 of these new Premier fixtures next year. But what we also learned is that it has still not been determined how these meetings are going to receive their extra funding. The levy board, it is hoped, will provide some funding, but it was also acknowledged that money will have to come from the bottom to pay for increases at the top. And the Thirsk chief executive spoke about how, in reality, that is going to mean maybe 600 quid a race off their contests next year. Other racecourses share similar fears, and I think in general sense there is still a question mark about whether this 2-year trial of saying that in a 2-hour window on a Saturday from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. we'll only allow 2 Premier meetings and 1 other meeting, everything else will have to clear that window, whether that will actually work in one of its aims, which is to increase the interest and profile of those big meetings. It's a trial, so let's see how it goes. But I've got to say, in principle, Nick, I don't quite see how running a maiden hurdle at Hexham 10 minutes before a Group 1 race on a Saturday
is good for the...
No, it seems to me, I can't see how that's improved things. And I also think that the ITV window is the Premierisation window.
Got to bring Stuart in here. Stuart, are these measures going far enough? Are they far enough toward the Savile plan? You're somebody who instinctively, I know, is pro this kind of move.
I think the BHA for the last 20 years or so has been, along with the bookmakers and the racecourses, gone down the route of producing more and more racing. That's the way to grow the sport, is to produce more and more and more. We've got to the point now where we're at saturation. There's not enough horses to fill the programme. There's not enough owners to own the horses. And I think it's turning punters off betting.
Well, that's what the bookmakers are saying, isn't it? And that's what's driving this.
So we need to do something. Whether this is the right thing to do or not, I don't know. But we need to change. Racing hates change. But you tell me, will the clearing of the Saturday, will that not just mean that Ireland move into that position and the bookmakers show all those Irish races instead of the English ones? I don't know how it's going to work. At some point, someone needs to say, right, what happens next? Where do we go from here? And have a firm plan. We've only heard snippets of what they're going to do, how they're going to fund it. And I personally think we should have a fixed plan in place where we've got everything costed. This is what's going to happen. This is going forward.
So you think this is piecemeal? It's bit by bit by bit by bit, rather than a.
Yeah, big... I do. I think we should have a big plan for racing. I think the BHA, the bookmakers, the racecourses, the participants need to have. But isn't that
what the Peter Savile plan was supposed to be? It was a document about that thick. It was around to about 75 pages.
It was, but we don't like change. But something radical needs to be done. We can't just keep adding and adding and adding to the programme, expecting there to be money from nowhere to turn up and people and horses turning up at 10 o'clock in the morning and 9:30 at night. It's not working.
What do you think, Lee?
I think that, I think Stuart's right in the sense that there is a reluctance within British racing for change. The ARC Chief Executive Martin Cruddas referenced that this week when he was talking about the Racing League. But I think equally, you have to, there's no point going for change's sake. I think you have to be pretty confident about something before you implement it, or certainly reasonably hopeful. And you also have to acknowledge that if something isn't working when you bring it in, then you abandon that and you try something else.
On that note, should we move on to the saunas? I mean, in another week, maybe 7 days ago, if we'd done this programme, we'd have been right in the middle of this, right in the thick of this debate, and people would have been wanting to talk. I think everybody's done the talking now. Both sides have had their piece. They're not coming back, are they, Stuart?
I don't think so. I can see the jockey side of it, and I've got all sympathy with them. Anyone who's had to starve themselves for any reason will know mentally it's a very difficult thing to do.
Is it worth just reminding everybody that you rode at...
It was a long time ago.
But it's a serious point, because you at least have some empathy here.
When I was an apprentice, the bottom weight was 7 stone. It was 7 stone 7, and I rode at 7 stone 7 and claimed 7. And you had to weigh everything at those times. You didn't get any allowances at that point. So I had to be 6 stone 10 to ride at 7 stone. And as a kid, I had to starve myself to do that.
Basically as a child.
I was 16, 17. And that's what people are doing. So I think a much better way would be to have the jockeys and the doctors from the BHA have a meeting every year and have a set weight for each jockey that they can't go below. Then they've got a weight that they know they're comfortable doing. Us as trainers can say, we know that jockey can't do below that weight, so we're not going to ask him to. There's no pressure from us, no pressure on them, and then, it's safer for everyone.
Can we raise all the weights? Is that feasible? Apparently there's pushback from the NTF, National Trainers Federation, on that.
Well, they can raise the weights, but I don't think that fixes the problem. All you do is move that problem onto a different set of people. That you will have people trying to lose weight to ride at any weight that you put. If you put all the weights up to 10.5 stone, you will have all of the jump jockeys coming down to try and ride the
Are they
fat
just
horses.
not getting too big?
They are. People are too big.
So what?
There's
not much we can do about that.
Well, we will end up with, I think, more female riders in the future. They're not as big as the male counterparts, and as proven by Holly, Safi, and many others, they're very capable of doing the job.
It could actually be a complete change in the way jockeys are recruited, with that being the central driving force.
I think, Nick, we need a complete change in the way that jockeys are recruited. I think there needs to be much closer examination when young people come into the sport about whether physically they are going to be able to sustain a career as a jockey whilst at the same time not tormenting their body. And I think that's one reason why I've penned a column for the Post on this for tomorrow, why I've ended with exactly the same conclusion that Stuart has come to. That individualised minimum weights surely have to be answered. They're already in place in Ireland for apprentices, where the Chief Medical Officer there of the IHLB, Jennifer Pugh, works with the dietitian with young jockeys over a period of time, and they establish a weight that jockey can do safely whilst not abandoning eating, whilst having a healthy lifestyle. That jockey therefore then has a level. That level can be reassessed. Trainers know what that level are. You don't have a situation whereby jockeys are regularly seeking to ride at weights below which they should be riding at. I sat down with Harry Davies 2 weeks ago, excellent young apprentice, intelligent young man, and he already made the point that everybody knows that jockeys try to ride at weights below which they should be riding at. As a long-term, sustainable answer to horse racing, that cannot be the way forward.
We don't want jockeys walking away from the sport. We don't want owners walking away from the sport either. But the Racing Post this week has documented several owners who say, at any rate, that that's enough. Prominent National Hunt owner Carl Hinchy says he's done. Ollie Harris, who has got a huge string now between Gary Moore and Owen Burrows and Neil Mulholland and others, he's saying that he can't get a bet on, and the affordability checks are likely to turn him away from the sport. There was who else? With Phil Cunningham.
Yeah,
he said the same.
Yeah, he's spoken about how he's being impacted by affordability.
Was there another
checks.
one as well? I think there might have been.
So yeah, I mean, it's a list that gets longer and longer. And honestly, Nick, if you look at the emails that go into the Racing Post, I can't recall anything in which more readers are more engaged on a subject
than affordability checks.
Yeah.
Because this is now starting to affect people day to day, and people are actually really beginning to see their recreation, their pastime, their love for horse racing as expressed through betting completely compromised.
Honestly, I cannot understand how the Conservative government have come up with the proposals they've come up with, that, you know, sensitive information belonging to a person should not have to be given to a bookmaker when they have, in reality, in most cases, had a terrible record. They keep getting fined for doing stuff wrong. A lot of the time they're selling this information to other firms. You know, I just think it's wrong. You know, and reasonable, genuine people are not just going to volunteer their bank details and you know, anything just for the sake of having a bet. They're going to say, well, I won't bother doing that. And I think that's a terrible situation for racing when, you know, next to the owners and breeders, the punters are the people who put the most money in. It's
interesting. You would rail against me saying that you are a gambling yard, but within your yard, you have and have had a lot of people who are really quite successful, professional punters, at least people who make a significant chunk of their living and therefore their ability to spend money on horses in your yard from gambling.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the attraction of having an everyday horse. Not everyone can have the big group horses. Your big group horses and that they pay for themselves and everything. But an everyday horse, a lot of the attraction for a lot of people, just like having a bet. And if you're going to put, you know, Tom, for instance, Tom Morley,
who owns Quinault and
who owns
many
Quinault
others,
with his mother and everything, and has had horses with us for years. Now, he's not a big punter, but he liked having a couple £100 on here and there when I said to him that I think we've got a good chance today. He will not give his bank details to the bookmakers, so he's just stopped betting. You know, and that will affect me eventually, because he'll say, well, I can't have a bet, so what's the point of having that horse there? We'll get rid of it.
It's interesting. People quite rightly highlight gambling-related harm and pursuits that can be addictive. But once you get out of the habit of doing something, it's quite hard to get that habit back sometimes, Lee. If you get out of the habit of betting, if you're a daily punter to whatever stakes, and you just think, well, not that bothered by it anymore, it's not worth the hassle, you can slide out of it for quite some time, quite easily.
Absolutely. Nobody needs to bet. Nobody is forced to bet. We do it because, well, the vast majority of us do it because it's an activity and a practice that we enjoy. But you're right, Nick. If you're told you can't do this for a period of time, then you almost certainly will go and find different things to do to amuse yourself. Or if you really do want to do it, you'll find avenues of being able to do it in the black market where you have no protection and where a sport like horse racing receives no benefits.
But if somebody like your man, Tom Morley, says, just can't be bothered to bet anymore, what does that say for all the people who are even less keyed in, engaged, invested in the game?
Yeah, I think it's a huge problem that racing's facing right at this moment with the government. And the other thing is, people say, oh, well, I'm not a gambler. Everyone's a gambler. Getting out of bed in the morning's a gamble. Crossing the road in the day's a gamble. You know, it's natural for people to gamble. We should be absolutely protecting the people that can't help themselves and get in difficulties. But it's a very, very small percentage of the population that are in that position. And we're using a sledgehammer to crack a nut here.
Okay. And we're also devolving power from government to a regulator, the Gambling Commission, whose actions and decisions make it blatantly obvious they have got minimal knowledge, understanding or expertise.
Shall we replay the Andrew Rhodes interview after after Luck on Sunday? You go back and have a look at it if you want to. Those were this week's talking points. In a moment we'll be continuing that discussion with Tory MP Philip Davis.